Let's be honest, most people don't want to change. Most people do not want to release a part of themselves that they feel comfortable with, even when that part of themselves is holding them back. Most people do not want to do the hard work of disciplining their mind in order to get to where they want to go. But in order to control your manifestation, you have to change your self-concept. You have to change how you see yourself. You have to change all of the realities that you consent to being true. That's what the self is. I overcomplicated manifestation for so long, and I get so excited when I make these videos because I just know that it's going to plant the seed in someone's mind for them to make the change that they need. It's going to click. Like once manifestation clicks for you, there's no going back. Manifestation comes down to disciplining your mind. You have to convince yourself through the use of your imagination, through the use of your consciousness, that you already have what you desire. You have to truly embody it. You cannot have any resistance. And that is the hardest part, releasing resistance. For some people, it's much easier. For others, they have to do a lot of reprogramming of their subconscious and conscious mind in order to create an environment where a seed of a desire can flourish. Think about it this way. Your state of consciousness is the environment upon which your desires will either die or thrive. If your mind is a desert and your desire is a magnolia tree, the magnolia tree will never grow in that environment. You have to manipulate and discipline your state of consciousness to be able to accommodate that magnolia tree. And that is the work most people don't want to do when they are manifesting. When people ask me, what techniques do you use to manifest? I always wonder if they understand exactly what it is they're trying to do, because what you need to focus first and foremost is creating the environment, creating the self-concept where you are consenting to the reality that you want to bring about. Whenever I hear someone say, I manifested that, I replace it with, I use the power of my mind to make myself fully believe that I already have the thing I desire and therefore I received it. That is fundamentally what we are doing here. We're using the discipline of our mind in order to forge a new reality for ourselves. It requires practice, it requires persistence, it requires faith, and it requires groundwork, which is why we are here today. Most people will not allow themselves to recognize that they don't believe what they want is possible for them. And that will always prevent you from getting it. You have to use the power of imagination along with unwavering faith to manifest your desires, to make them reality. If you're new here, my name is Charlotte, and I make videos for people who want to get out of their own damn way. We talk about strategies and tools that will help you achieve your desired reality. So if that's something that you're into, please consider subscribing, and please leave me a comment letting me know what questions you have about manifesting or what you are currently working on manifesting. I would love to hear it. I made a Google Doc worksheet for you all that can sort of help guide you through these principles that we're going to lay out here today. So if you want to check that out, it's in the description below. And I also put resources that I've referenced for this video in the description. When you see the word manifestation, I want you to realize that there are a lot of different schools of thought underneath that word. It's an umbrella term, and a lot of them work together to create a more overarching philosophy. Today, we're going to be talking about self-concept, and I'm grounding it in the law of assumption, which is Neville Goddard's teachings. Neville Goddard taught throughout the United States between the 1930s and the 1960s, and he was actually quite a radical figure at the time. People called him heretical because he used the Bible as a metaphor. He truly believed the Bible was a metaphor for the human experience, for transcending into different states of consciousness. Obviously, his ideas have withstood the test of time. He died in the 70s, and I'm still talking about him today, but I think his writing is a little alienating to the modern audience, not just because of the biblical content, but also because of how he wrote it. He's a beautiful writer, but most self-help content today that people are used to is very direct, and he uses a lot of metaphors. So as we go throughout the video, I'm going to be explaining his work and where he stood, and I'm going to be deviating from him at a few points, and you'll see what I mean by that. Let me first explain the law of assumption. And what did Neville Goddard mean by assumption? So let's take the word assume literally and use it outside of a law of attraction context. Let's say you walked over to a colleague and you say to them, I assume you already got lunch. In the moment between you saying that and them answering you, it doesn't matter whether or not they had lunch. You are taking on the opinion that they have. You are taking on the belief that this reality is already in existence. I assume you already had lunch. I assume this has already happened. I have taken on the reality and I have consented to the idea that you have already eaten lunch and therefore it is done. That's what you're doing with what you want. I assume the reality that I have already gotten the job. I assume the reality that I have already gotten the 100,000 YouTube subscribers. I assume the reality that I already bought the house. It is already done. My wish is fulfilled. That is why it is called the law of assumption. You are assuming the reality of the wish fulfilled, and you are living in that reality every day. Now, when you live in that reality, you are changing your state of consciousness. That's what Neville Goddard calls it. Neville Goddard never actually uses the term self-concept. He is always referring to the state of consciousness that someone is in. And let me define that for you, because this is important. A state is defined as all that you believe and consent to as being true. So if you want your world to change, you must determine what you want to accept and consent to as true before you can change it. You can think of states of consciousness as a ladder, and you're always trying to transcend up the next step on the ladder. The reason I read that to you is because I want you to differentiate between thoughts, individual thoughts, and your state of consciousness. Your state of consciousness is made up of thoughts, ideas, and feelings. You use all of those things as tools to create the environment in your mind, in your imagination, to create a new state, to transcend the ladder of the states of consciousness, according to Goddard. So it's called the law of assumption because you are assuming the state of consciousness of whatever it is you want to make reality. You are taking on the state of mind of the person who already has or does the thing that you want. And this is important for self-concept. I'm going to use self-concept and state of consciousness interchangeably here. And law of assumption feeds into law of attraction as well. It's just Neville Goddard doesn't talk about frequencies or vibrations. Law of attraction is more talking about the frequencies and vibrations that your subconscious emanates, and that is what you attract into your life. So they're very related. They overlap if you were to make a Venn diagram, but they use slightly different methods of explaining what it is you are actually doing. So I made this Primer 101 video about manifestation, and I wanted to root it in reality as much as possible for people because I think that's where people get tripped up by our logical and realistic minds. Nothing I said in that video is incorrect. It is simply a different way of thinking about manifestation. It is a more basic understanding of it. And I define self-concept using a lot of psychological terms such as self-esteem, self-consistency, self-image, those sorts of things. And that's all correct. That does make up your self-concept, but I did break it down in a way that was a lot more prescriptive, and it was very much like bottom up. And right now I'm going to look at it top down. This is very much a 102 course of manifesting with a little bit of primer. Neville Goddard emphasized that our imagination is what changed our reality. And in order to reprogram your mind, in order to make what you want your reality, you must change your state of consciousness. You must change the state in which your mind is saturated to allow yourself to believe you already have what you want. And so many of us are walking around in a state that does not allow for that environment to exist. And so that is what I mean when I say change your self-concept. You have to change how you feel about the world and about yourself in order to make what you want possible. So let's talk about this conscious and the subconscious mind. It seems, based on what I've read by Goddard, and I haven't read every single thing he's ever written, obviously, so I may have missed something, but it seems like he thinks the subconscious mind doesn't discriminate or filter. It just sort of accepts whatever the conscious mind tells it. I don't think that's necessarily true. What I'm about to teach you is more along the lines of what Bob Proctor teaches about the conscious and the subconscious sort of being at odds with one another. You have total control over your conscious mind. You can think, you can reason, you can accept or reject ideas. You get to decide what thoughts your conscious mind has. The subconscious mind, however, is what you don't have that much control over because it is holding deeply rooted beliefs and habits that you have essentially inherited from the people in your life growing up. Bob Proctor teaches that your subconscious mind is actually what drives your behavior, and you're running on habit most of the time. And your conscious mind can feed the subconscious mind, but there's also sort of a feedback loop, because if your conscious mind feeds your subconscious mind a thought that does not jive, they don't go well together, that's when you're going to have resistance. That's when you're going to have conflict. Now, you need that conflict in order to change your subconscious. You can consciously reprogram your subconscious mind to replace the beliefs you have. This requires deliberate and persistent discipline to fight what the subconscious actually believes using the conscious mind. It is not an easy process. Where a lot of people get caught up when they're trying to manifest is they do not want to unpack the beliefs that they have in their subconscious. They are beliefs that they inherited from caregivers, from their parents, from their teachers, from their friends, from the media. Those beliefs and ideas are going to control your life until you address them. I bring up the conscious versus subconscious because I think it's important for people to recognize that they may not be able to see this stuff without actually working on it. So let me give you an example of what this existing programming might look like in an everyday person. So let's take Agatha, for example. Agatha is 28 years old. She lives in the city. She has a good job. She has benefits. She makes decent money, but she has this burning desire to open a bakery. She wants to start this business. If you go back to her childhood, her parents struggled a lot when she was very young to make ends meet. And whenever she asked for something, whether it was a new toy or to go out to eat or something like that, her parents would say, we can't afford it. And so she internalized that. And even as she got older, her parents did make more money. They weren't struggling so much anymore, but her parents still held on to this frugality. Her parents had a scarcity mentality around money. She remembered this one time for her 14th birthday, they went out to dinner and she wanted to get a soda and her dad told her, no, you don't get a soda when you go out to eat. You get water because it doesn't cost anything. So now as a 28-year-old woman, Agatha worries about money all the time. She gets haircuts every other year instead of going 4 times a year. She won't buy the more expensive coat, even though she knows in the back of her mind it will last longer, but she just can't justify that price tag. $150 on a coat, that's too much. She'll get the $30 one from the thrift store. Her default programming is, I'm never going to have enough money, or money is hard to come by, or I can't hold on to money if I am not extremely careful. She has a scarcity mentality around money, but she would never call it that. She thinks that she's simply responsible. She doesn't feel like this belief is hindering her in her everyday life. In fact, she feels like it is an asset to be frugal, to not splurge on things. She thinks that is what's going to save her money. But ultimately, the state of consciousness she currently has makes it so terrifying to take the risks required to become an entrepreneur that she will never make it happen. Not only do you have to spend money to make money when you're opening a business, but you also have to trust that money will come in because you're taking a risk. And she will never allow herself to do that with the mindset she has. In order for Agatha to succeed at opening her business, she has to truly believe that she already has it. And in order for her to truly embody that person, the concept of herself as someone who has trouble obtaining and holding on to money has to change. Her state of consciousness must change. Her self-concept must change. All of these words interchangeable. Agatha doesn't recognize her default programming as something that's holding her back. She doesn't recognize her state of consciousness needs to change. How to reprogram your mind to have a new self-concept. Goddard says in order for anyone to start recognizing their state of consciousness where they reside right now, they need to start with self-observation. You need to look at how you react to the everyday experiences you have. Start by observing your reactions in your everyday life without judgment. So Agatha has heard about this manifesting thing. She did some research. She watched my YouTube channel. She subscribed. Oh my God, hey. She catches herself now when she says something that has to do with money because she's like, oh, okay, maybe I do have a scarcity mentality around money. And now she has to start to notice it. So the next time she tells herself, I can't afford that, she's just going to pause. She's just going to hold space for that reaction. She noticed it. She took note of it in her mind, and now she's moving on with her day. The first step is simple awareness through self-observation. The next step is non-identification. You have to distance yourself from that thought. Non-identification means that you no longer identify with a thought pattern that has previously defined your reality because you are transcending into a new state of consciousness. You're transcending into a new existence. Your mind is becoming a different soil for you to plant a seed in, one that fits that seed's needs. I want you guys to know I did this for myself. And when I started by trying to do too much at once, it didn't work. I had to just stop and notice. That is a thought I no longer want to identify with. We have taken note of it. We're moving on. If you are in the trenches of your emotional mind and you have completely lost control over them, which I was at many points in my life, changing that thought seems like a lot of work, but noticing it is something you can do. Building that muscle of self-awareness is crucial. In the beginning, I don't recommend anyone try to change it with affirmations. People will start by saying, I am abundant, or something like that. They'll come up with an affirmation that they don't truly believe. If you do not believe your affirmations, your mind is going to feel that resistance. It's going to do nothing. In the beginning, when you start this process, you're going to notice how many limiting beliefs you have, and it's going to feel overwhelming. I want you to start pushing away those limiting thoughts using affirmations that you believe. Like I said, if you're just saying I'm abundant, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. You don't know what that means. Your mind doesn't know what that means. Maybe somebody out there does, but that means nothing to me. Whenever I had a thought I no longer wanted to identify with, I said that. I'm like, I no longer identify with this thought. Or I'm becoming the person that no longer identifies with this thought. And if you still feel like that doesn't fit, if you still feel like that's too much, one of my faves is, oh, that's my dad talking. Oh, I can't afford that. Pause. That's my dad talking. Because it is. You know it is. You've done the work. You thought back to your childhood. You remember your dad telling you you can't have a soda. That's my dad talking. You have just allowed yourself to no longer identify with that thought. You have assigned that thought to your father. That's not you anymore. That does not belong in your state of consciousness. That's your dad's thoughts. Another thing I would say to myself is, oh, that's old me. I don't react that way anymore. It feels so good. It feels so good. That's how you're going to start building towards affirmations that are actually affirming and not just distancing. You start with the ones that distance you from it, because those are the ones you believe right now. And then you go to the affirming ones. The third thing that Neville Goddard says we all have to do in order to transcend states of consciousness, in order to change our self-concept, is to sacrifice your old state. This is the hardest thing for people to do. People do not want to do this. You have to get to a place where you are willing to give up your old story. You are ready to let go of it. People are comfortable. Our old programming is comfortable. In fact, when you go to visit your family, your whole family might have the same programming and same ideas about the world. The people you've surrounded yourself with in your life might share those programming because that's who you attracted into your life. You have to decide that you are ready to live in the end of in your desired state, in your wish fulfilled. So once Agatha is ready, once she starts to think money is easy, she starts to think about how she can start spending some money to start her bakery. Money is so easy. There's so much capital out there that I can tap into. Money is so easy. That is where she's replacing her new programming. She's also allowing herself to go get her hair cut 4 times a year instead of once every other year. She's going to buy that coat that's going to last her for 5 years instead of falling apart after 1 year. She's going to spend more money on the things that make sense to her because she knows that she can always make more. She's releasing that scarcity. She's releasing this story that she held on to because she was comfortable in the fear, and she was weirdly proud of her frugality when it was holding her back in reality. There is also a fourth way you can change your state of consciousness, though it is not a 102 sort of thing. It's a more advanced. People on the internet call it quantum leaping or quantum jumping. Neville Goddard never talked about it that way, though he did talk about transcending states of consciousness, like being able to move up the ladder more easily. And that is essentially what you are doing when you are quantum leaping or quantum jumping. You are using your imagination to just transcend your consciousness like that. What I am explaining to you right now is a long, long process because it's going to require repetition and persistence and discipline. But when you get to a point in your manifestation practices, in your ability to control your self-concept, to control your state of consciousness, to be able to make yourself believe that anything is truly possible, to release that resistance to the realities that you have been shackled to, the logic and the reason, you're able to quantum leap. You're able to jump into new states of consciousness because you're like, yeah, why can't I have that? There is no resistance to you having whatever it is that you want. It's all so very exciting. It's so cool. Once you figure this stuff out, it's so dang cool. As a treat for you for getting so far in the video, I'm so proud of you. It's so exciting. I'm going to read to you some quotes from Neville Goddard because I didn't start to get this stuff until I started to read. I think you can learn a lot from other people explaining things. I do. And I think videos like these can be excellent resources to plant seeds in your mind to recognize what is actually good for you to start with. That is why I'm telling you where to go to find more resources. Like Bob Proctor, if the subconscious and conscious thing is like spoke to you, go look up his stuff. If the states of consciousness speak to you, Neville Goddard, really good. If you appreciate prose, he's a good writer. If you're someone who wants like just get to the point, you're not going to think that, but because he writes in metaphors, he writes about the Bible as a metaphor. Someone becomes God when they realize the power of their imagination, according to him. I am God is how he explains the human imagination. Again, this was really controversial stuff when he was talking about it in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like the book I am reading you quotes from right now is called The Power of the Unlimited Imagination, and it is based on his lectures he gave in 1952. So he's saying this stuff in 1952 about the Bible, and he was considered like heretical. It really was. So here are some quotes. There's so many good ones, but here are some of the quotes I feel like might help you understand. Learn to discipline your mind, for only the disciplined mind can maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled. If what you had imagined has not come into being, it is because you have not severed the ties that bind you to the level where you now stand. You must break your mechanical reaction to life in order to change your life track. To arrive at a certain definition of self, you must begin by uncritically observing your automatic automatic reaction to an event, for your reaction defines your state. It's so easy to feel sorry for yourself and so very difficult to give up this feeling, but you cannot enter another state before you do. Thoughts are things. When you identify yourself with the thought, it outpictures itself as an act. If the thought is unlovely, it defiles you. Awaken and select only thoughts that contribute to the birth of your desire. You must constantly observe your dwelling place, for where you are psychologically is what you are. Your mood indicates your state, and you are always externalizing the state upon which you stand. Here is a playlist of videos I think you might like. If you like this video, you got to the end, that's incredible. Please consider leaving a comment and liking and subscribing. It helps me out a lot. If you wanted something to comment, please let me know what you want to see next. What questions do you have after watching this video? I trust that this video has reached you at the perfect time and has planted the seed that you need to grow into the person that you want to be. And I thank you so much.